Accerelate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the GG Report. I'm your host, Godfrey Gishoki. Glad you tuned in. It's always a pleasure to come to you this Friday evening. Now, once again, we have lined up a very interesting conversation today. We're going to be talking about leveraging politics to accelerate Africa development. That may sound very, mouthful, but we're going to try and break that down to something that we can all digest. I have a special guest with me, a man all the way from West Africa, Nigeria in particular, my friend and brother, Oshiniji Abiola. You know, we struggle with Nigerian names, but this one I'm going to master. And so welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege and honor to be here. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be speaking to my East African brothers. And it's an enormous, honor to be here on the show.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, Mr. Abiola, for coming on the set. So, ladies and gentlemen, how we play politics determines how we develop Africa. That's really what we are talking about. The African economic development is checkered. The history is checkered and plagued by many challenges. Among them, poor governance, corruption, nepotism, high dependence on foreign aid, capital flight, political conflict, weak democratic institutions, among many others. And this is what we're going to be focusing on. So welcome to the GG Report. As always, the GG Report is a platform where we delve into big, bold ideas, honest conversation on a broad range of subjects, socio-economic, political, theological, philosophical, and today is going to be a mix of economics and social dynamics, and we will cut across the board, and I believe we're going to enjoy the show. Please share the link. Those of you that are following on our social media platforms, we are live on Elevate TV Kenya, Facebook page and YouTube channel. Please share now and comment. Leave your footprint on this show as you follow this conversation and tell us what you think. And if you think there is a guest out there that you'd like us to interview or a subject matter that you'd like us to discuss, please, you're free to comment and make your suggestions, and we will send us links, the numbers on the screen. You can send us a text, so that will be very helpful. Now, let me introduce my guest, and then we get the conversation underway. Like I said, my guest is Mr. Oshiniji Abiola, and he's a global development expert, a system strengthening consultant, and I'm going to be asking him to talk about that. He's also a digital health evangelist. This is in respect to matters to do with what we call IoT, Internet of Things, and again, specifically in the area of health and digital health for that matter. So he'll give us a little bit of that background. He's also tri-sector, that is academia, partnership, expert, and he's also sustainability and ESG expert, futurist, C-suite executive, board advisor, speaker, absolutely amazing man here. So Mr. Abiola has a very strong interest in strengthening the relationship between Kenya and Nigeria, or maybe you could say the East and the West of Africa. And so welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you very much, Pastor Gigi.
So let's get this conversation underway. As always, we like starting from your story, career background, your life growing up in Lagos. I'm assuming you're born in Lagos, and you can give us that background, and then your work experience in Africa and beyond, so we can get that going.
Thank you so much. I think let me just start with where I was born. Of course, I was born in Lagos,
Yes.
incidentally, like you mentioned.
Yes.
And I was born into, I like to call it an hybrid family because my dad happened to have been more like a global citizen at that time.
Right.
He's of blessed memory now. And at that time, he was more like an expatriate living in Nigeria.
Okay.
So it gave me a platform to understanding globalization, global economics, global living, because consistently every single day or every single time we went out, I was kind of exposed to white people, to intellectual conversations, to politics and development conversations. At his own time, he was both an engineer, a mechanical engineer,
right,
and an electrical engineer at the same time.
Wow.
So,
amazing.
My competence and capacity to do many things actually comes down the line. It's in the DNA.
Absolutely.
On the maternal side, my mom, was a high flyer. In fact, one of the people she served then as an executive secretary then to what they used to call it was personal assistant or personal secretary back then.
Yes.
What has become an executive assistant today.
Yes.
Became a governor in one of the states in Nigeria.
Okay.
So she was a high flyer working in a multinational German company based in Nigeria. She had experience working across, Schroeder, which is a German company as well, to Schneider and the likes. So she worked in administration. So I have that background of both having a father engineer, that
right,
is a super administrator, and a mother administrator, coming together, and an entrepreneur, by the way, as well.
Yes.
Bringing me up. And it was quite interesting that at the time the country Nigeria, I'm Nigerian, was quite in a, how would I put it, in a more balanced state.
Right.
Because the people, or what you call the citizens, felt if you work, you earn, you have a great life.
Right.
Historically, you would notice, or you would know if you find out, the naira to the dollar was that the naira was stronger than the dollar.
Okay.
It was as a factor of you would spend about 84 kobo to one single dollar. So we had more economic power, right, than the dollar.
Okay.
And that fizzled down, over the years. I schooled in a military background, so I like regimen, right, regimentation. I like process. I like protocol. I like order. In fact, my mom stopped me after my dad died that I should not get into the military. I actually wanted to go into the military, specifically the Navy. Okay. And at a point, I was even trying to get into the U.S. Marines because I loved the idea of being able to play global politics and global espionage. When you go into a country, extract your own citizen, with minimal harm and minimal damage, and get work done. I like those, very clinical processes of getting things done. So absolutely, and that built my understanding of being nimble, which is one of the things that the U.S. Marines have, and a lot of marine organizations around the world, particularly the Navy, because of their competence to be able to fly and also be on ground at the same time. So they work as if they are the Army and as if they are the Air Force. So they are and that was the understanding I had as a kid. Yeah. So I proceeded into secondary school. Because of my passion for science, of course, I went into sciences, but not necessarily because I wanted to be a doctor. What I just wanted to be able to do was to understand how science actually controlled the world. Okay. And by the way, science, math, and problem-solving skills actually control the world. Yeah, that's true. And if you find anybody, whether you be in arts and you have the capacity to be able to master the skill of problem solving, you literally rule your field, because what will happen is people will always bring problems to you. That's true. I always say that when you think about value creation, it's about problem solving. So if we can if I can solve a problem,
Yes.
money will flow to me, value will flow to me. So
Absolutely.
my value is about solving problems in that regard, So
absolutely.
and that was one of the things I quickly picked up as a boy. In fact, I remember a conversation I was having with my elder sister. I think when I was turning 25, she was telling me that as a child, she had known me that I would always put 1 + 1 to become 11.
Right.
Whatever math that was, I would make it happen, because
Yes.
I believed in the concept of multiplying things.
Okay.
Within the understanding that God has given us the capacity to create wealth.
That's true. That's true.
And we must consistently multiply wealth. I believe in the idea that if you are given a cup of coffee, you should find a way to replicate or multiply it. So to make things grow in your hand, it was something I was passionate about.
Absolutely.
And I'm extremely passionate about Africa. Why? Because I believe that Africa is the beginning of the world.
Okay, so because I want us to go to the specifics, so perhaps I would like you to just highlight for us in terms of work experience, these various dynamics. We're talking about global development expertise. You could probably just highlight that how you got into global development and if you have experience in that dimension, and then system strengthening, consultancy, and stuff like that. Just mention them in passing in terms of the experience you've had, some of the examples of projects and programs you've been involved in, in a way. Then we can now come back to the issue. Of Africa itself, because that's what we want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we want the young Africans. We are speaking to the young Africans. You come from Nigeria.
Yes.
You are part of the newer generation.
Yes.
And me as well. And so we are speaking to our fellow young, middle-aged Africans and saying, look, it is our time. Maybe we are not solving the problems our fathers solved, but we need to focus on our problems, that plague our generation.
Yes. To the conversation around how I got into global development. So right out of the university, I wanted to not go into the labor market like everybody else.
Yes.
Because first of all, if you understand, Nigeria is a country with over 200 million people. Opportunities are very scarce.
I will hold you there. 200 million people. You graduate from university, so you're 1 out of 200 million.
I give you a bit of statistics so you get the background. Every year, we admit in our university system over 1 million people.
Okay.
Every year.
Yes.
From different secondary schools.
Yes.
It means that every year we would graduate. Now, a mix. So because when 1 million is coming in, what happens is you have people that have bridge programs, either pre-degree or they go to diploma programs and join the system as well.
Yes.
So you will graduate roughly about an additional 800,000 to or 1.5 million people.
Okay.
Now we have different levels of education. So you have the monotechnics, you have the polytechnics, you have the university, and you have the college of education.
Yes.
All of these are considered graduates.
Yes.
Now, all of these graduates actually require jobs.
Exactly.
And if you look at the job creation pattern within most African countries, we are not as creating as many jobs.
It's the same story everywhere in Africa.
So it then means that you must have some competitive edge.
Exactly.
For you to first be identified and for you to even get a job.
Absolutely.
So, and that was one of the things I started looking at, that how do I build a competitive edge?
Okay.
So I did not want to go into the system without understanding what I wanted to do and how I wanted to succeed in the system.
Okay.
So I had a background in urban and regional planning.
Yes.
And I was really interested in urban health and global health. So what I did was chose to leave an opportunity in the bank to work in an NGO that was working on an international HIV project. Okay. Funded by the USAID. Okay. Through Pact USA. So that gave me a platform to be trained and mentored around what global development, especially around healthcare, was. Now, because I had a background that did a bit of data analytics, geospatial analysis, I combined all my academic knowledge plus the data analytics part of it and statistics with the new knowledge I was getting from, working in a small NGO.
Yes.
And before long, what they did was they made me the head of M&E, which is monitoring and evaluation.
Okay.
So I focused on monitoring and evaluation. And I must say, there's no global healthcare project that does not have at least a budget of about 10% for M&E.
Absolutely. By the way, speaking about M&E, and it's something, by the way, I have seen that it's a growing specialization.
Yes.
M&E.
Yes.
Monitoring and evaluation.
Yes.
For those who are watching this particular program, and so very, very critical. So what I like interesting, and that's what I want our viewers to hear, is the idea that you had this urban planning is
background, yes.
Urban planning background,
yes.
Plus the science around it,
yes.
And then now you're working with a HIV-based program,
exactly.
And then you have the management skills and all that,
yes.
And everything seems to fall in place. In other words, what you're saying is that for us to find our way in a career environment, given all the dynamics and the competitiveness, you have to bring every skill you have
absolutely
to bear.
Absolutely. There was one skill that was also quite interesting that, it was not obvious. It was much later that people started noticing it, was that I was always on time.
Okay.
Just being always on time.
Just personal discipline.
That personal discipline and that personal commitment to timing. So for instance, I made sure I was always getting to work ahead of everybody.
Okay.
It gave me a head start of an hour to do work. And so after a few months, I had work that was supposed to be backlog that had actually been resolved.
Okay.
So what it gave was a great pass. So the USAID team and the PAC team came for a visitation.
Yes.
And they found out that our NGO became the most performing NGO in that region.
Okay.
Just because I dedicated an additional 1 hour.
All right.
Every day.
Yes.
So because I was on time, it gave me the ability to do more. Then, of course, I was able to then create additional value.
Okay.
That additional value, what it did was they now opened up their own network of resources to say, we will send you for additional training. You will mentor other organizations within your network. So I started mentoring organizations even from my first year
right
of work.
So that's very good. So okay, so I think we can hold that discussion because the other things will come out in terms of strengthening, system strengthening, and I guess it's tied to what you're talking about.
Yes.
And the digital part of it. So let me ask you something to do with this development thing. Based on your experience working with the development organization, technology and government, what are the challenges? I want us to nail down on the challenges that are facing African economies. You have a background, you have worked there, so you've been there, seen that, and you have very good training, and you're well traveled, including traveling to Kenya many times, and you have now very strong connections here.
Yes.
Let's nail down and then see if we can address ourselves to some of the most significant challenges.
I start off directly from the strongest point and probably the most valid point.
Yes.
Is the issue of availability and accessibility to data.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? Africa actually sits on enormous amount of data.
Okay.
As I speak to you, if you look at any of our systems in Africa, it is still primarily somewhat paper-based.
Okay.
So you go to a healthcare facility, they clerk the patients. We now are transitioning to some part of our EMRs, right? And we've all heard about the conversation around big data. Big data fundamentally is talking about that every single time as a person you are generating enormous amount of data. If it is picked and analyzed, whether through machine learning or artificial intelligence, it is easier to get certain data descriptions there, certain information that can be used for decision making.
Okay.
So in that regard, it means that if I bring all of the data that was initially on paper, think about 10, 15 years backwards,
okay,
a teaching hospital, a primary healthcare center, it means diagnosis will be easy and treatment will be faster. It will be cheaper, because it then means I don't need to have, in code, because of our human resource gap, I don't then need to have a doctor physically in each hospital.
Okay.
What I would I would need to have is a healthcare worker, and I'm using healthcare worker, so meaning it could be a health assistant, it could be a nurse,
Yes.
it could be a health technician, and I'll share some of the experience I've had where a health record officer actually took delivery of a child because of the ability to get knowledge from information from training that was basically digital.
Okay.
And it was in a remote location. And it did neonatal resuscitation using that same system. And this is a record officer.
Absolutely.
Literally. So,
absolutely. A record officer in a hospital
yes,
was able to do a delivery
yes,
just because he had information.
yes. And was also able to do neonatal resuscitation.
Absolutely.
Neonatal resuscitation is when the baby does not breathe properly,
Yes.
and is beginning to die because he's not breathing properly.
Okay.
Maybe for some reason that there's mucor in the lungs of the baby.
Yes.
The liquor from the mother's womb has entered into the nose, so the child cannot breathe.
Okay.
So I'm speaking medical terms because I've spent so much time
Working in the
working in the healthcare space.
Yes.
So, and I was marveled by that, working in with different sectors. So I've working with different healthcare workers. So going back to what I was saying about data, but with that singular example, because he had information, he was able to make decision that would literally have resulted either in the death of the mother or the loss of the baby. So the baby and the mother are alive because he had information.
Absolutely.
Now, so that's exactly how we have it in Africa. So from primary school or your elementary school, you have your dates, your name, date of birth, your information, all the activities you did, to secondary school, your healthcare data, your tax data, your movement data.
Yes.
All of that data put together can actually aid government in planning quickly. I
Yes.
can tell you the number of children that will fall sick and with a forecast, approximately plus or minus a little variation. Because of course every forecast is not perfect, but what it does for us is that it helps our budget control.
Absolutely.
And which is one of the biggest problems with Africa, because most of our budget seems like guesstimates.
By the way, so actually already in that conversation you have identified two things. So a resource that it's not in the conversation, the massive data resource that is available in Africa.
Absolutely.
That can actually, enhance decision making.
Yes.
Leverage the wealth and the ideas that are, within our system.
Yes.
Accerelate, for example,
Exactly.
information, healthcare, education, everything, and that's data based.
That's database.
A whole, is a gold. It's like a gold mine.
We're literally sitting on it.
Absolutely. And then the other thing is what you've mentioned, the other idea about budgeting
Yes.
our resources.
Yes.
So maybe I will ask you specifically, do you think, because most African governments may be right now running what you call deficit budgets, where they are planning, whenever they plan every year, the budgets they put out has a deficit. The revenue are going to be at this level, but we are planning to spend at this level. So there is this gap.
Just a gap, yeah.
So most African governments, do you think that is a problem?
So I would say it's a problem and it's not a problem, and I would explain why.
Yes.
So if you look at the concept of growth, even as a personal person, you can choose to use the principle of other people's money,
Yes.
to grow your own economics.
Okay. Yes.
So what that means is that if the government can pool resources from other sources, or from other options, and use that resources judiciously,
yes.
invested in strategic growth poles,
Yes.
or strategic growth areas of the economy,
Yes.
what would happen is that the revenue that will be generated will compensate for that deficit over time.
Okay.
I give a typical example.
And time is an element there.
Time is an element.
Okay.
Yes. So, for instance, if the governments of Africa begin to say in the next, and this has happened before, and I'll give you a typical example.
Yeah.
Malaysia, story goes that Malaysia, or history has it's in history that Malaysia actually did come to Nigeria to learn to grow palm oil.
Okay.
Nigeria is one of the biggest producers of palm oil, but we have the land, we have the expertise, we even have dedicated federal institutions to palm oil development and growth.
Yes.
However, we are not the largest producers of palm oil in the world. Now, the largest producers of palm oil in the world, including countries like Malaysia, actually came to learn how to grow palm oil or palm trees from us.
Okay.
So it then means that there is a deliberate understanding of how do we strategically grow an industry or invest in that industry to let it become a global giant.
Okay.
And grow GDP, and by implication, grow job creation, by implication, so it's a deliberate process. And that's where I like the idea of how politics can play a significant role in identifying those strategic areas where we can invest in as a continent and grow. And one of those very simple places is agriculture.
Yes.
I don't know, for whatever reason, we play a little bit of, we downplay agriculture and try to, in Africa, and try to move to other things, maybe by some adoption of some idea that is kind of Western.
Yeah. We get very fascinated, for example, by, say, electric cars.
Yes.
So we'll talk too much about electric cars. We'll talk about drones, all those fancy new ideas, while we are neglecting very core industries.
Yes.
For example, like you have raised that, it just reminded me that in our country right now, we have a crisis of some sort because vegetable oil, cooking oil, the prices have doubled. So now you talk about an industry, palm oil, which is actually a major, if you're not getting vegetable oil from sunflower, you're getting it from the palm trees.
Exactly.
So those are the two primary sources.
Yes.
And so you are saying, Africa has the capacity to, grow this stuff.
Absolutely.
But now prices are doubling.
So the first thing is this. So if we look at it from an industrialization perspective.
Yes.
If I say that we want to grow significantly production of, we want to triple or quadruple or be number one, I think we should be very definite. We want to be the number one producers of palm oil in the world. So maybe Kenya says that or Nigeria says that because probably we have a history of doing that.
Yeah.
What then happens is that we will strategically position investments, private sector partnerships, agric, training, young people's inclusion, women inclusion, loans from private sector as well, to that particular goal.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Abiola, I'm going to hold you there because we've run out of time. You can imagine how fast this is going. Ladies and gentlemen, you're following this conversation. We are talking about leveraging politics to accelerate Africa development. And we've kind of like done a problem statement, just identifying the little bits and pieces where things are falling apart. So when we're going to go into a break, when we come back, we're going to now pursue that and ask ourselves, what about policy? How can we get into the political space, influence policy, and hopefully be able to influence how development happens in Africa? So don't go away, take a short break, grab yourself a cup of coffee. Let's come back to this conversation very, very shortly.
Good marketing makes the company look smart. Great marketing makes the customer feel smart. Are you looking for a place to advertise your upcoming conference, church meeting, or ladies' meeting? Look no further. Elevate TV is offering you a chance to advertise from as low as 5,000 Kenyan shillings. Talk to us today. Call us on 0705 872237.
Welcome back. This is the Gigi Report. We are having a conversation here. We are talking about leveraging politics to accelerate Africa development. And before we went for a break, we were talking about a very explicit example. Palm oil, for example, as an industry. Nigeria, my guest here is telling me Nigeria is one of the leading producers of palm oil, or actually Malaysia learned from the Nigerians how to do this stuff. And today, they are not necessarily leaders. So Coming back to that example, I want us to ask ourselves, or I would like you to tell us how we can leverage politics to, say, for example, influence a very critical industry like the palm oil. Absolutely. And that lesson can be applied across many other domains. So policy, how do we leverage, how do we work with politicians?
So first of all is, aligning, first of all, creating a vision as a country or as a continent to where we want to go. Okay. Because if we do not have a vision that is, specifically spelled out, then there's going to be a problem. Okay. And that vision is non-partisan. It is bigger than everybody. It is bigger than parties. Mm-hmm. It is bigger than families. And it is bigger than, individual countries. Absolutely. Because if it is a continental, if it is a Pan-African conversation, mm-hmm. what it then creates is a Pan-African interdependency. What I'm saying is, it means that if there is no oil, in this case, vegetable oil in Kenya, mm-hmm. because we have an abundance in Nigeria, we can simply just ship to you. Absolutely. Without necessarily you having to go to the West and, buying in dollars. Or even order from, buy from Ukraine. I hear Ukraine. Exactly. Yeah, the sunflower. And you're literally going to be, buying in dollars, mm-hmm. which for some reason, I don't want to sound, anti-America or anti-dollar, mm-hmm. is going to be strengthening the American economy. Mm-hmm. What we should be focused on as a vision is how do we strengthen the African economy by trade dependency within us. Inter-Africa trade. Inter-Africa trade. Yes. Now, with that roadmap in our mind, agriculture being one of the biggest, and by default, the way God has created Africa, we have great arable land from the north of Africa to the south of Africa. You can literally grow every kind of crop on the continent here. Yes. Every kind of farming can actually happen on the African continent. Mm-hmm. Now, what we then need to do is begin to gradually move from subsistence to large-scale farming. Absolutely. Now, whilst we're thinking about mechanization, we should also recognize that our population, we should be able to look at what level of mechanization really does Africa need. Yes. I'm not talking about automation. Right. Yes. I'm talking about mechanization. Exactly. Now, automation will mean that people will lose jobs. We are trying to create jobs. We are not trying to make people lose jobs. Yes. In literal terms. And that's a significant differentiation. Yes. Yes. So, with mechanization, it means then we now have, tractors, large-scale farming. Now, people, with low, moderate skills can actually operate those machinery. We can do packaging, and we can then begin to ship off the continent, earn foreign exchange and get foreign direct investments in those industries that are related to the agro industry. And for context, the agro industry has multiple aspects in the entire value chain. Absolutely. Which also includes manufacturing that we are struggling with on the African continent. Absolutely. So if just the manufacturing component of the agro value chain is strengthened within Africa, we will be able to push our manufacturing index a lot higher. Because there's tractors, you need tractor chains, you need irrigation equipment, you need chemicals. Yeah, you need the piping, you need the fertilizer. There's quite a lot within the agricultural value chain. Okay. Specifically for something like palm oil that we're talking about, you already have, the continental competence within specific countries that are around the coastal areas. Yes. Of course, Mombasa, I know, is a coast, so you already have some viable proposition in terms of land places that you can grow it. Absolutely. Now, let's come specifically to maybe, and you can give us an example because you have worked in the space, academia, government partnerships, exactly, and development partners, academic institutions, and that kind of thing. So, how people in the private sector, development industry, can partner with government, and especially in terms of practically influencing. I think of the set, you told me that, for example, that one policy document signed by a governor, a regional governor, can lift the several thousands of people out of poverty. Yes. One piece of paper, one signature. In fact, a policy document signed by a governor can lift 1 million people out of poverty. Absolutely. And I'll give you a typical example to speak to what you're saying. Yes. Okay, so what we could do, and I've seen this happen many times, is that the private sector already has the money or the capital to inject.
Exactly.
The private sector already has an efficient model of operating that optimize resources for revenue. And, within the global space right now, there are conversations around corporate sustainability and environmental sustainability.
Exactly.
So the private sector is very geared and understands that.
Yes.
Now, the academia, especially within Africa, across the continent, has done extensive research, on different aspects.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it
yes,
means in our universities, we're literally sitting on knowledge areas that we can practically use. Mm-hmm. So I just on the side, in Nigeria, when you go to university, you would use your money as a student, no sponsorship, to run a research. Mm-hmm. And the professor will publish a paper on the research that you ran.
Which you paid for yourself.
Which you paid for yourself.
Absolutely.
But the research actually provides positive outcomes that could be used, but it remains as a journal, just for academic purpose. Mm-hmm. How do we begin to bring those, academic knowledge, those academic research values that the private sector can tap in from? Mm-hmm. So it means we need to create a safe zone where the private sector, a forum, where the private sector feels safe to invest its money, time, and expertise in growing the knowledge areas that the academia has actually already researched on. I have done a small pilot that is only maybe like 5 acres, right?
Yeah.
But the private sector can do 500 acres.
Absolutely.
That's first. That's one part.
Yes.
Now, the government then needs to create that enabling policy because, with the framework of policy, you can have, tax holidays, you can have, committees that allow that, ease of conversation between the parties that are working there. What that then creates, because I don't want to go quickly to international development, bringing that there, what that then creates is an enabling environment where the policy framework of government is supporting the interaction. So the government has set up institutions, whether they are not able to fully fund them is another conversation.
Yes.
Whether they've already discovered new hybrids of products that can be planted with good yield is another conversation because it's not in public knowledge.
Yes.
It's not in public domain.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've seen is that you find people in the academia actually floating within government, out of government to academia, or sometimes within academia to private sector, just as consultants. How do we bring all these parties together? First
absolutely, absolutely. And so what you're saying is that the potential in Africa is such that if we, that's the whole leveraging thing. The leveraging is bringing together all these partnerships.
Yes.
The academia, the private sector, skills and competencies.
Yes.
And then working with governments who control the policy, or rather you influence the policy, and then once the papers are signed, then you can have everybody safely operating.
Yes. Now, with the policy framework, you then get budget backing for government.
Yes.
Because when something is gazetted, the government would always put a budget to implement.
Absolutely.
Now, that is one level of it for financing, for project or for... Now, the private sector already has its own finance as well.
Yes.
So it means that you can create a basket fund or a basket investment initiative that allows the private sector to bring its money, the government to bring counterpart funding, where it's always talking about we don't have enough funding, but the private sector is incentivized enough because of reward and return on investment to bring their own money. Now, the last partner, the international development partner.
Yes.
Now, with a framework like this that functions and gets results, creates impact, the international development partner is happy to bring their money for something that works.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we need to tell Africans and people in Africa and our generation of Africans.
Yes.
That we think that the international partners, there is a lot of money out there, private money, by the way. Pension funds in the US, pension funds in Europe, sitting on mountains of cash. But It is the environment. They are watching and saying, if they see a zone, a place where in Africa people are doing a good job, and there's an environment where if they put in their money, it's not going to disappear into some
absolutely
unscrupulous.
Absolutely. I give you a typical example from my past experience.
Okay.
And present experience where I work.
Yeah.
I once led a project that was £152 million.
Okay.
That was done across 3 countries and was done only in a few states in Nigeria.
Okay.
And the focus of the project was basically providing satellite technology to give access to data and information to healthcare workers in remote locations.
Okay.
Now, one of the biggest outcomes of that project was that the project outperformed itself, because the kind of results we were getting was the example of the result I talked about, the HMIS officer that literally took delivery of a baby. Now, but we had spent time over the years before that project came to prove a model that this can work.
Yes.
The second example I'm going to give, I presently work as the Vice President of Grid Integrated Services.
Yes.
And we are an IoT company that provides temperature-controlled commodities to monitor temperature commodities with devices.
Yes.
Now, these devices are so intelligent that they basically work on your GSM platform or GPRS platform and give you real-time information on what's going on to your commodity, temperature, pressure, humidity, location. So what that tells you is that if I have data on all of these parameters, I'm able to say what's happening to my commodity in transit or in storage. Today, a lot of food is lost by Africa. More than 50% of our food post-harvest is lost because of storage conditions that we could have actually managed.
Okay.
Now, investing in storage is significant. However, some private sector people already have storage, either as warehouses that they have for their normal, but they are underutilized.
Yes.
And storage is in 2 zones. There's ambient temperature, which is what you call room temperature or slightly above room temperature.
Yes.
And cold storage.
Exactly.
Now, these 2 storages already exist somewhere.
Yes. And there's somebody who has extra.
Exactly.
Extra capacity.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so it is grossly underutilized. Not that we have enough, but we don't even have an idea of where those storage facilities are.
Okay.
So first of all, what we've begun to do is map out those storage facilities to provide access to knowledge to farmers and to those that need that information to be able to use them to access the storage facilities.
Absolutely.
So what that does is, if I've built a storage facility, I can now get additional rent on the underutilized time that I would never have used. So first, I get more money, I get more efficient use of my facility, and the farmer pays lesser cost because he doesn't have to rent solely a place to store his farm gates. Now, if we move that to logistics, it means that we can aggregate. Different people can put together their stuffs or their commodities on a truck.
Okay.
Which it becomes cheaper because I'm not going to pay the entire truck load. Let's say there's a 7-ton truck and I just want to move 500 kg or 2,000 kg. I don't need to get a 7-ton truck.
Okay.
I just pay for my own composition in the entire truck, and somebody else would actually pay for that same composition, provided our commodities require the same temperature. And I can track independently where my commodities are in real time. And this is all happening on the African continent.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as you follow this conversation, I hope we are not speaking over your heads. But what we are saying is there is so much opportunity in Africa in terms of agribusiness, logistics. My guest here is talking about, so for example, just that, technology where you're able to map all the places where there is cold storage, whether it is stationary or it's moving. There's somebody with a cold storage truck. Put it in a pool of database where, just like the way you order your Uber,
exactly,
you can order some square meter of space in a cold truck, maybe from Nairobi to Mombasa, and transport your tomatoes and sell them or send them to your mother-in-law.
And they'll come at premium price because you have now kept them in good storage. They
Absolutely.
don't need to be put on the back of a truck that you will lose a lot of your commodities.
Yes.
And with aggregators, it is when they actually sell the commodities that they come to pay the farmer.
Absolutely.
So you are sure of higher return on investment, and we can then begin to talk about getting our farmers out of poverty. we can then begin to talk about lifting a lot of people within the agricultural value chain out of poverty. And this is just like I said at the beginning, a concept of providing information. Now, so first, you've already provided data for them to be able to see visibility of the infrastructure they need. Secondly, they are now able to pay lesser and have higher value products that are actually in the market. It means we'll be addressing the issues of food security rather a lot quicker on the African continent, and it means that rather than those losses should be losses, many people will be fed, and we can begin to talk about exports of the continent, which is basically foreign direct investment.
Absolutely.
So in terms of policy, policy creates that framework, and one of the things I've done in the past is to sit down with a politician in a simple way, and I must say, is every time you're engaging a politician, think of it and ask him, what kind of legacy do you want to leave in government?
I like that. I like that because you see, I like that question. So you whenever you're dealing with a politician, you need to ask about legacy.
Yes.
Whether it's at the local level, whatever middle, district or federal.
Yes.
Nigeria is federal.
Federal. Yes.
So by federal we mean you have regional governments.
Yes.
And here we have county governments.
Yes.
They're much smaller. When you compare what we have here and what you have in Nigeria. Actually, in Nigeria, Kenya would be one
state.
One state. Absolutely. But anyway, back to that. So you're saying whenever we engage in politicians, we need to ask them such questions that impact their own personal. They can connect with that personally.
Yes.
What's your legacy?
What legacy do you want to leave?
What are the other ways you can engage a politician and get their attention?
So many times when we speak to politicians, we are speaking as either technocrats and over their head. We're speaking we're speaking language that they don't understand. We're not connecting to the person.
Yes.
We're not connecting to the importance of his mindset to the office.
Yes.
Those are very critical parts of a person. Because while he's in office, he's thinking about also that he either wants to pursue future office. How can I help him pursue future office with the kind of value he creates?
Exactly.
It will take a bit of time, honestly, for us to be able to get people not thinking about corruption. But can I create an alternative for him to see that he can actually create impact that will transcend the idea of being corrupt?
Actually, by the way, Mr. Biola, I think I like this conversation because for the longest, if you listen to political conversations, especially among young people, they're always moaning continuously about politicians being corrupt. But when a politician is sitting in office, there are many things around them.
Definitely.
But one of the things that the conversation we are not having is engaging the politician and asking them, what's the kind of legacy you want to leave behind?
Absolutely.
What are the things that make you worry? What do you think we can help you with to get re-elected? Because every politician wants to get re-elected.
Absolutely.
So if you came up with a clever idea, you're going to be partners.
Yes, I must say you run the risk, right?
Yes.
That your idea will be hijacked, right? And partly taken away.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Yes.
You would always, fate and, the universe always present opportunities for us.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest things I've learned is that if you keep innovating, opportunities will find you.
Absolutely.
So when I'll give you a typical example. During my leaving from the university, and there's something we call the NYSC2 in Nigeria, just like your NYS.
Yes.
We have like a year to serve the government.
Okay.
One of the statements I made while passing through one of the capital cities where I was going to serve, I said I was going to dine with the kings and I was going to dine with government and I was going to influence policy.
Okay.
So I started looking for the ways I could actually sit on the table. How do I find a seat at the table?
That is a very important conversation. I want to hear that. How do I find a seat?
How do I find a seat at the table? Because one of the many things we do, unfortunately, we are too far from the table to even have a conversation to say, what legacy do you want to have?
Absolutely.
The politician must trust you enough for you to have that conversation with him.
Exactly. So, and therefore, you must come to the table.
You must be on the table. You must have some close caucus relationship with him. So it means if I am a person of questionable character, I will not get that referral to that person.
Okay.
I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and I said, people are doors. And honor is the key to doors. So if you honor people, what happens is that the people open up themselves to you and you get into their network.
Absolutely.
And when you honor a person, it takes a bit of, there are multiple steps in this particular context. Now, if I see that there's a problem in a particular city or a society,
yes,
and I write a well-articulated document, even as a policy brief, with data, I take my time to research data, have some interesting quotes from people around, and I send it to probably the Nairobi governor.
Okay.
Right? The tendency is that it might get lost in transit.
Yes.
It might never get to his desk.
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
But because I've written a policy brief, my next dedication, first I'm developing a policy brief. My next dedication will be, how do I get this document to someone that has the ear of the governor?
Absolutely. So you can, if you can't go to his office directly, you can go to someone else who has the ear of the governor.
And I'm using it very carefully, the ear of the governor.
Exactly.
So the moment you always, one of the things I found out is that the way the human network is created, there's something called the neural network, is that we're usually 3 or 4 steps to the destination that we are going.
Yes.
The first time I discovered this was, I think it was on LinkedIn. I found out back then, when Obama was president, I was literally 3 steps to Obama. And that's phenomenal to me, that how can I be 3 steps to Obama? It means I knew someone that knew someone that knew Obama directly.
Yes.
So you always know somebody. You are literally between 3 to 10 steps from the person you need to go to.
Absolutely.
You just need to take your time to find out. Be meticulous about finding out that person. And I don't want us to go, deviate too much into that. But with that policy brief, then you can engage the governor.
So actually, by the way, Mr. Abiola, so I think what I want our listeners to understand, that if we really are going to leverage politics to influence development in Africa, we must learn certain skills.
Absolutely.
Like what you're describing, a policy brief, that's a foreign thing. By the way, let me ask you, do you think that pastors, church leaders in our nation or even in your nation understand what's a policy brief, and could they actually ever do it? And would that be one of the reasons why they are not on the table?
So, quite interestingly, I like to say the intersection of the church with politics has always been from time immemorial.
Right.
There's no way you can separate
church and state.
Church and state.
Yes.
In fact, you know that historically, the church founded many states.
That's true, actually, by the way. Yes.
So, for whatever reason that you can want to wrap your head around, you would always recognize that the men of God usually have access, and that's something that is divine, to statesmen and politicians.
Absolutely.
So whether for guidance, whether for prayer, whether for, statesmen would always come to pastors, and that's exactly how God has created it.
Exactly.
Even when they want to get, as a side joke, when they want to get into office, they will definitely go and meet the pastor.
Come for prayers.
And
yes.
they definitely go for prayers, and the pastor will bless them. If they want to even launch a new scheme, a pastor will definitely pray on that scheme and it's prospered.
Yes.
It tells you the important role that within the African context, despite we like to say that, we're very religious, or the truth about it is that this is who we are, this is what we are, and we need to embrace it.
Absolutely.
It means that pastors and religious leaders have strategic position within the grand scheme of things of how development does happen on the African continent.
Absolutely.
Now, if we have accepted and recognized that, what it means then is that what kind of information does the pastor share when the political leader or political office holder is around them?
That's a very big question.
Because if I am only, and I'll give an example, and I'll use the Bible, for instance. When Moses was administering the children of Israel, because he had Jethro spoke to him and said, the way you're administering these people, you cannot do it correctly and efficiently.
Yes.
And he gave him advice.
Yes.
Now, it now falls on the shoulders of Moses whether to take Jethro's advice or not.
Yes.
But Jethro has spoken.
Yes.
And that's exactly the same way it is.
That's the same way it is. And I know we are wrapping this up, and I like the way you're describing this idea of leveraging, politics. So what you are basically, and if I were to pick like some of the key issues is, you need to be prepared. So, and you can leverage connections. You are 3 or 4 persons away from almost any politician, any leader
Absolutely.
of government, whether global or local.
Yes.
So that's very important. So and then the other idea is that you need to be on the table.
Absolutely.
That table. And then the other idea is that if you get to the table, then you need to have something to offer.
Absolutely.
Jethro had something to offer Moses.
Yes.
Plus leveraging the fact that he was a father-in-law.
Exactly, yes.
You have to speak to me, Moses.
Yes.
You can't ignore me.
You can't ignore me.
That kind of thing. So even as we have father-in-law, opportunities and all that.
Yes.
So what you're saying is that you need to be prepared. You need to have a script, and that's the way we will leverage. That's how we influence our pressure. Do you think, especially among young people, that we are making a mistake or we are unprepared to face and leverage our influence in politics?
The absolute answer is yes. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Every time a young person looks at politics or politicians,
Yes.
what we do is castigate them.
Okay.
Rather than try to analyze and learn from their mistakes. I used to be like that.
Yes.
Until I began to sit closer to people around influence and power, and find out that when you really understand the enormity of what it means to lead a state,
Yes.
you are bound to make mistakes.
Okay. You can say that again.
Yes. When you think about the enormity
Yes.
of leading a state,
Okay. Or a county
or a
or
county.
a government.
Yes. Because you are human. Because you do not rely only on your own advice. There's so much dynamics around you. You are bound to make mistakes.
Okay.
Now, you should quickly be able to forgive political leaders and quickly look at it that what exactly was the reason why they made a mistake. I give you a typical example. When I kept researching people like Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, even Obama, they had specific regrets of the kind of decisions they made in their life.
Yes.
Mandela may not have talked about it, but it was documented that he kind of regretted the fact that he actually divorced from Winnie, because he had to think about it, that he had to separate himself from her because she was connected to murder charges.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
But it was later found out that Winnie never committed any of those murders.
Okay.
They were just fabrications. But at that time, it was hot. As a leader, he needed to take a
Mandela
stance.
needed to keep this woman out of the...
Yes.
So that he can be the good guy and a good president.
Yes.
Only to discover later on now.
But, that mistake had been done.
Okay.
Today, we still celebrate Mandela. It doesn't change the fact that he's a great leader.
Yes.
So people do make personal mistakes. People do make errors.
Yes.
And some of those errors can be political errors.
Exactly.
Obama said it and recorded it. Is on record that the idea of Libya and then pursuing the idea of Libya was something that, he sort of did not like. He regretted actually pursuing.
He made a big mistake.
He made a big mistake.
Absolutely.
Pursuing that. And that's based on the information that they have. Understand today that every political leader that you see, for some reason, are insulated for the realities on ground.
Absolutely.
Which is why you need that seat on the table with them to be able to engage with them. Every single time as a young person, think, how do I bring that information closer, correctly? Tested, trusted. Don't bring random information. Test that information. Ensure that information is correct. Give them real ideas that has been tested. Have your facts ready to be able to actually help them, make those decisions. Then you are sure that something, will begin to change. It may not happen in your own time, but you are moving closer to the change that you want to see.
Absolutely. I can't add anything else. We must bring this to an end. Thank you so much for staying tuned. This has been the Gigi Report. I'm your host, Godfrey Geshoke. I am telling you, I'm sure you've learned something. God bless you. We come to the end of this show. God bless you. Thank you so much. We'll see you another day. Stay tuned to Elevate TV. Keep it Elevate every Friday. God bless you. Bye for now.